Hi guys, welcome again. This time we'll be making some roads, and to be honest this was a bit of a side project that I decided to post today instead of my main project that I didn't really manage to make on time. It's a bigger thing and it's taking a lot more time than I thought, and the project is just growing and growing in scope. So maybe it will be even posted in like 2 or 3 videos, we'll see. But for now, let's explore how to make some roads. Basically the idea came to me after I've made a modular board for my Mordheim table, well, I didn't finish it yet, but I've got some modular pieces with like a cobblestone texture. And after we've put the houses on the board, it didn't really look quite as I wanted it to. It wasn't quite satisfying because I made it with just uniform flat cobblestone texture. So it lacked some kind of direction, so to say. And it just looked weird when the houses were just scattered around willy-nilly without any rhyme or reason. And I thought that making some roads would tie the table nicely together. For the material I chose cardboard because I wanted quite a lot of these pieces, and cardboard is cheap and abundant, and making nice things on a budget is basically my motto on this channel. So yeah, cardboard. My name is Jarosław and I hope we can learn something together in this video. Okay, so let's start by getting our tools together. First, as always, of course, our trusty knife. Then we're gonna need a ruler, something to write, a square or however it's called, and lots of cardboard. Lots and lots of cardboard. This episode's cardboard is sponsored by IKEA. Anyway, you want to pick your cardboard box apart, find a suitable strip, and at this point you'll have to make some decisions regarding your roads. I decided that I want my roads to be 7.5 centimeters wide, and I wanted the elements to be about 20 centimeters long, but with some variation. I made some 30 centimeters long and some shorter. I measured everything out, what a change for once, and then tried to make some square angles with the square, which is quite new to me, to be honest. Then I'm just cutting out whatever I've drawn, and I'm going to make my roads out of a few layers of cardboard, so it's not that important the direction of the creases in it. But if you're going to use just one thick piece of cardboard, try to cut your roads lengthwise. And then I just repeat it as many times as I need to, with many different shapes. Here you see me make a triangle shape in case I want my roads to go at an angle in relation to the board, and I'm just using a scrap piece of cardboard. And I'm also dry fitting everything together every now and then just to be sure that my measurement stays true. Here I'm making a little square piece, 7.5 centimeters on each side, to make a little crossroads, and it all fits really nicely. Came out quite square, which is really something new to me. I rarely pay attention to these things. I tend to make my terrain by eye and not pay much attention to being exact, but in this case I want it to stay modular. I also wanted to have some curved pieces, some curved elements of road. So I took a scrap piece that wasn't quite big enough for a straight piece of road, but I thought it would go to waste if I just cut it up into smaller elements. And because I don't own calipers of any sort, I just measure 7.5 centimeters at several points to make my curve. And then I just cut it with a knife freehand. If you go slowly and have a sharp knife, it's quite easy to do. And then I make some more smaller curved pieces. I wanted to be able to make my road curve at a 45-degree angle, so I'll be cutting this 90-degree angle in half to get 2 smaller pizza pieces. And again I'm cutting it by hand and then splitting in 2. So now we come to the first method of how to reduce warping in your cardboard terrain. Warping is mainly caused by tension, either by paper absorbing water and stretching, or by glues and paints drying and shrinking and therefore pulling the paper together. It can be reduced if you, for example, make your cardboard thicker and use the natural creases of cardboard, layer it at a right angle, kind of like plywood. Here I'm just using a regular glue stick, one lengthwise piece of cardboard to another one where the lines go at the 90 degrees angle. I'm also not throwing away any scraps because you can use them just as well to make your cardboard thicker and stronger, and cutting doesn't go quite smooth. I rushed it a little bit this time. After you're happy with the elements that you've produced, you can start sculpting your sidewalk. And here I've used some paper mache clay that I had left over from my horns project. I'm just putting a rather thick layer, spreading it out with a tiny spatula. I'm also trying to cover the edges to hide the cardboard pattern. Then I try to make the edges of the sidewalk straight by scraping the excess off. And I'm using my cutting board to make the sidewalk equally thick on each piece. I've decided to make it about 2 centimeters wide. And after that I'm again using the side of the tiny spatula to mark out the stones. And I'm wiggling it a little bit to separate the fibers in the paper mache. After that we need to do some little cleanup, because moving around paper mache like this will distort our sidewalk a little bit. So I'm just smoothing it out again and giving the edge a second pass to make it more square and make it look more like stone and less like paper mache. After that was done, I decided that leaving all the roads the same as they were would be a little bit boring, and I decided to spice them up with some greeblies. For that I took some cheapo polymer clay, sort of like Fimo, but a lot worse, and made some sewer entrances. I'm using a bottle cap adorned with a Bretonnian knight to cut the round sewer entrances, clean the edge with the tiny spatula, and then I sculpt the pattern onto it. Initially I wanted to make it look like a grate, but it didn't look quite like I wanted to, so I just went for like a checkered manhole cover rather than a storm drainage. We're also going to need some handles for the manhole cover, and I'm just rolling small cylinders of the polymer clay and giving them some shape to look like handles. It's all pretty basic and easy stuff. When you're done sculpting, you need to bake them in an oven for about 15 minutes at 100 degrees Celsius, and you can just glue them straight to your pieces with hot glue. I also made this piece of ruined road, and I decided to decorate it a little bit with some random stones and pieces of plaster. Also, if you're a little bit confused throughout the video with changing types of cardboard that I use, and you will sometimes see different stuff in the background, this is because I made this in 2 different batches, which will become more apparent once we get to painting. And painting these roads was a little bit problematic than I thought it will be. Anyway, I wanted the road itself to have quite a different texture than the pavement, so I just used some sand to make it look like, old rundown gutter or something like that. Then we come to the next method, or maybe not preventing but reducing warping in your cardboard pieces. Just make them stiffer with bamboo skewers. Bamboo skewers are themselves quite flexible and made out of wood, which can also warp when you add too much water, but they definitely stiffen up the piece, give it more strength in general, and they are quite easy to insert into cardboard because of the large spaces in between the layers. There's one step left before we get to the painting, and it's sanding the edges of the pieces because we want them to butt nicely up one another, so I'm just giving them a quick sanding. Then we can get to painting. First a black base coat, and even after the paint is dry, cardboard likes to retain a little bit of moisture, so I wrapped the pieces in a paper towel and left under the book to give them some more time to straighten out again. As I said, I wanted the middle of the road to be rough and dirty, so I'm just starting with some brown. And this is the first batch that I painted, and I mixed the brown with some black to darken it, which I didn't do on my next batch, so you will be able to see some differences. For the sidewalk, I didn't want it to look like all the other stone that I use for my table, so I mixed a little bit of red into the gray and dry brushed it heavily, and then I wanted to have some paved stones have a little bit of a different hue, so I mixed some blue in and then some green in and just experimented. But in my opinion, it didn't look quite nice, it looked quite disjointed. I simply didn't like it. I tried to make it better with a white dry brush on top of it, but that on the other hand made the whole thing way less noticeable and kinda not worth it. You couldn't see the colors anymore. So for my second batch, I simply dry brushed them brown first and then made a second lighter dry brush with light gray instead of white as I usually do. So I'm hoping that they will stand out nicely in comparison to the buildings and the modular terrain that I did. Every now and then I'm comparing the old batch to the new batch, and I just decided to redo the old batch and also give it a brown dry brush and then a light gray dry brush, although they didn't came out quite the same because the layers underneath it also influenced the color. But at this point I was happy enough with how it looked. When you're looking at the table, it won't be as noticeable. Now for the ground cover. Again, I used a little bit of a different colors in the first batch, but mostly came down to paint ratios and not different paint altogether. I made some tan with yellow and brown and dry brushed a first layer of it, and for the second layer I added a little bit of white to my paint mixture to give it some highlights. The last element on the list are the manhole covers. I'm making some brownish red and heavily dry brushing the manhole covers, and then I found some cheap metallic paint and gave it a little bit of a silver dusting. I should have probably used a darker color, but I didn't want to use my expensive miniature paints for this project. As the last step, as some of you may have seen, I left some holes in some of the road pieces and I wanted to make some puddles. So I'm mixing some neon green with gray and blue and a lot of water, trying to make a muddy wash, and I'm just filling the divots in. After the puddles are dry, I took some UV hybrid nail polish from my wife, the clear type, and simply coated my puddles with it. For the UV resin to harden, you of course need to put them under a UV light, but you can also just let them sit outside. And then the last step in ensuring that my roads are flat is pressing them together with some large books again, just to be sure. And after you are ready and happy, you can have some fun, just like you had many years ago when you were a little kid playing with toy soldiers. Oh, it was such fun just laying these roads out. I'm gonna be honest with you, sometimes I really enjoy making the game board more than playing the game itself. So, this is how the roads came out. And yeah, I'm really satisfied with them. As always, there are some things that could be improved. I definitely should sand the edges once again after they've been painted, because the paper mache soaked up a little bit of the water from the paint, I guess, and has gotten uneven again. So I'll probably have to touch up this again. Also, I've really learned the lesson to make this kind of stuff in one go with the same paints and the same techniques, but it just wasn't really feasible at the time because I was juggling a few projects around, trying new things out, and that's why the roads, if you compare it, they came out a little bit different. But when they are laid down together as a pattern, it isn't as noticeable. I probably could try and prime them again and do the whole thing over, but I think it would be a waste of time for a marginally better result. And as expected, they did warp a little bit, but it was pretty manageable with the methods that I've hopefully shown you in this video. And even if it's cardboard, you know, it's not particle board or MDF, which would be really hard to bend back to shape. Even if it's, you know, a little bit skewed, you can just nudge it into place and it will be alright for the duration of the game. So yeah, if you liked the video, if you've liked what you've seen, definitely click the like, comment, share, and subscribe. Of course, subscribe, click the bell icon, and hopefully I'll be seeing you in the next videos. Thanks and bye.